Hello, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency, devoted to promoting musicians and authors worldwide. Call us today at 941-877-1552 to start your free publicity evaluation. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. Please welcome the host of Interviewing the Legends, music journalist, author, and entrepreneur, Ray Shasho.
Hello once again, everyone. I'm your host, Ray Shasho, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends on BBS Radio, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call us today, 941-877-1552, or email us at publicityworksagency.com. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. And by the Rockstar Chronicles, Series 1, my new book, featuring over 45 intimate conversations with the greatest music legends the world will ever know. Available now at bookbaby.com and amazon.com. A very versatile acoustic and electric bassist capable of playing straight-ahead jazz, funk, and fusion, Brian Bromberg has built a respected career playing with a bevy of luminaries and issuing his own highly regarded albums, influenced by the virtuosic finger-tapping style of Stanley Jordan. Bromberg sometimes sounds like three basses at once during his often thunderous solos. It's a talent that found him a part of Stan Getz's group at the age of 19. Since then, he has been a valuable sideman with artists like Dave Grusin, Billy Cobham, our friend here at the station, Michael Bublé, and others. He recorded his first albums as a leader in the 80s with dates like 1988's Basses Loaded with Ernie Watts, and has since balanced session work with recording his own varied dates such as 1991's It's About Time, the Acoustic Project, 2005 Metal, and 2010's Bromberg Plays Hendrix. Thicker Than Water arrived in 2018, featured guest spots by Najee, George Duke, Randy Recker, and more. The Bromberg Plays Hendrix remix or remaster is available September 18th, but you can start pre-ordering as of August 14th. Please welcome legendary jazz bassist and record producer Brian Bromberg to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Brian.
Hey, how are you? I must be old if I'm considered a legend.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
A legend, but anyway, thank you.
You don't have to be dead to be a legend. You can be a living
legend.
There you
go.
How has the lockdown been for you? What have you been doing during the lockdown?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, the lockdown has actually been somewhat of a blessing for me. It's very weird. It's when you're forced to be, you know, when you're forced to have a change in your life, you have to adapt. And with the lockdown, it allowed me to basically record a whole bunch of music. So I'm literally working on my third record right now because, you know, you're stuck. You can't really go anywhere. And, you know, what are you going to do with your time, you know, and your energy? You know, you just might as well be creative and just look within and take all that angst and, you know, whatever emotional feelings you're feeling from what's happening in the world, and you put it into your music. And it's definitely been really incredible for me. I know it sounds weird, but it's been really great, and I've been able to do a lot of music, and that's been really wonderful because, you know, life can be very busy and challenging, and you're, you know, in back in the normal days, you're traveling, you're touring, you're in and out of the country, you're schlepping stuff, you're doing this, you're doing that, and you have responsibilities, and then when everything stops, you know, it's like, wow, you have all this time on your hands. And when you're busy, it's hard to, you know, sometimes focus on a specific thing. Well, when you're forced to focus, it's amazing what program my music and put in this much time into it at one shot.
Yeah, always look for the positive in things, right? That's
well,
what they say.
Again, if you're traveling or touring or working or this or producing, if you're doing stuff, sometimes it's hard to focus on something because you only have a limited time to do it. When you have a situation where your schedule changes and you've got nothing but time to work on something, it allows you to be creative and allows you to do things on your terms versus life's responsibilities telling you what to do. You can just work on it when you feel like it or when you're awake or when the spirit moves you, and it's a much more relaxed way to be creative versus like, okay, it's 2 o'clock, you have an hour, be creative now. It's like,
right.
Good luck. Where here it's like, you just do what you do, and it allows you to relax and spend more time doing things. So it's been a learning experience. It's really been it's been interesting. Of course, I'd much rather have everybody healthy and not have the amount of loss of life, and I'd much rather go back to normal. But again, it's been good for me personally to be able to do this. So hopefully the music will show that. Hopefully the spirit in the music will be good.
Sure. I can say the same thing because, I've been really, really busy because, that's what I do. Interviews and book people for my show and things like that. And everybody's been home. So it's been easy for me.
Yeah. Let me check my schedule. Okay, there is no schedule. So, Tuesday, 4 o'clock, perfect,
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, you make the most of what you got,
Exactly right.
I totally understand. Yeah.
I want to tell you, man, Bromberg Plays Hendrix totally blew me away, okay? 5 stars, I would give it 10 if I could.
Thank you, man.
Oh, my God. First of all, is it true that every instrument on there, besides the drums, were they all different bass guitars?
Yeah, it's just me and the amazing Vinny Caliuta. I've always liked to experiment with my instrument.
Right.
And, it's the instrument I play. For me, I like to take advantage of technology. I like to try to have vision and try to do different things. And I've always been kind of, it's like there are no rules, especially when it comes to creativity. I mean, that's the beauty of art and the beauty of creativity. There are no rules. You do what you do, and people either respond to it or they don't, and you're either good at it or you're not. I mean, it's kind of like you want to tell the story, and it's up to you to tell the story how you want to tell the story.
Right.
And for me, I didn't want to say this. I didn't want to tell the same story all the time, and that everything I do sounds the same. I didn't want to play the same instrument on every song, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again. I just wanted, I wanted to have a much broader musical experience within what my knowledge is and what my instrument is, because I basically play 2 instruments, and I play drums and I play basses, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
So for me, it's like, I don't want the bass just to sound like the same thing over and over again, so I do different tunings, different instruments, different approaches. So on that record, everything you hear are all basses, but I use them in different ways to try to make the music as good as I can, and make it as mine as I can, and also try to make it as interesting as I can, because the last thing in the world I want it to do is sound like, it's a bass player stacking himself, overdubbing it into something like a demo. So, it's just like the same crap over and over and over again. I just didn't want to do that. So for me, it was like, it's about the music, and especially when you're dealing with, an icon like Jimi Hendrix, who changed the world. He didn't just change music, he changed society. He was just brilliant, creative genius without probably even being aware of it. I wanted to try to do my best take on his music I could, and I don't want to try to sound like him. I didn't learn any of his licks. There's no way you could do that. Why even bother? I made the record mine, but in the process of doing that, I wanted to use my instrument in many different ways because it's what I do. So what I'm the most proud of about the record is how musical it is, considering it's one guy overdubbing himself 20 times.
Right.
And it still sounds like music. It doesn't sound like a guy overdubbing himself. It still breathes. There's still peaks and valleys. There's still emotion. There's still space. There's still energy. There's still solos that go someplace. It doesn't sound sound like an overdub record, and that to me is what I'm the most proud of. It really does sound like music. And, Vinny is just insane. He's the most in-demand drummer in the world, and he's amazing on the record. So to be able to jam with him and get that kind of energy was like, it was ridiculous. It was so much fun. I mean, you must admit it is a high energy record.
Definitely, yeah.
You're not gonna hear this record and go mellow out. If you're gonna meditate, this is the wrong record for you.
Well, a couple of things I want to say. I think if I'm correct here, you used 9 different basses. You used a 300-year-old Italian upright acoustic bass, and that was played on Wind Cries Mary. You use a BSX electric upright bass on Hey Joe. I mean, wow, what a collection you have.
Well, and for me, each instrument serves a purpose. I didn't just do it to where it's like, okay, I'm going to play another bass now because I have one.
Right.
It's like each instrument has its own sound, has its own role in the music, and for me, it's all about the music. I want the music to be right, and for the music to be right within my limitations and abilities, I need to use these different instruments as my tools for the different vibes and sounds that I'm doing. So each instrument has its own thing, especially by the tuning. If it's tuned differently, if it's tuned lower, if it's tuned higher, it's going to be in a different register. It's going to allow me to use the instrument musically in a different way. It's going to allow me to play a part that a bass player would normally not play because I'm assuming the role of guitar player.
Right.
So it allows me to do all these cool creative things utilizing the same instrument but using it in a different way, and that's what makes it so fun and creative for me because, I'm the weak link in that point, at that part, because it's like it's all up to me and what I can do with the tools that I have.
Yep.
So I love that because it's all my challenge of how can I take this kind of arsenal of musical instruments and turn it into music when it's one guy and essentially one type of instrument. That's the fun, challenging part of it for me.
Where did you get a 300-year-old Italian upright acoustic bass?
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like if Stradivarius made a bass.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
I have. Literally, it's that kind of instrument. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
And when I was 16 years old, a drummer friend of mine went into a music store there called Beaver's Bandbox. That's the guy's name. Their last name is Beaver. And it was Beaver's Bandbox. And he went in there to get some drumsticks or a drum head or something like that. And he saw there was this old bass that they literally had wedged up on the wall above the cash register, literally like floating in midair.
Wow.
And yeah, and they completely disrespected how they put the instrument there, but it was there. And he called me up and he's like, "Hey Brian, man, you got, Beaver said they got this whole bass hanging there. You got to go check this whole bass out, because I was a bass player, So I went in there, and I was 16. So my dad drove me, and we went in there, and when I walked in the door to the store, from the front entrance of the store, I could see the bass on the far wall, and I had an immediate emotional reaction to it. I literally got weak in the knees when I saw it, and that was it. I had to bring it down, and I played it, and convinced my dad, you got to buy this bass for me. Because I was 16, I didn't have the money, and it wasn't that expensive, trust me. But when you're 16, it was expensive.
Oh yeah,
they had no clue what they had and how much that instrument's worth.
Amazing.
But I was like, Dad, trust me, they don't know what this is. They don't know what it's worth. Trust me, please buy me this bass. I'll pay you back. You got to have this bass. So I talked him into it, and he bought it for me, and the rest is history. That's the bass that I toured with Stan Getz when I was 19. That's the bass I've used on every record I've ever made.
Wow.
It's like Michael Bublé, you put it, you listen to Moondance. Yep. The first thing you hear is my bass. It's like, that bass is on thousands of records and sessions and movies and TV shows, and that's been my baby my whole life, and it still teaches me how to play it, and it's still the boss. So
very cool.
It was an amazing find. But on the Wind Cries Mary, that's the only song on the record that I did acoustically and did it organically, and just took the breath of fresh air and chilled out, and I thought that bass would sound great on it, and that's why I used it on that.
How do you say Vinny's last name?
He pronounces it Caliuta.
Caliuta, okay.
Yeah, even though it's written Cola,
right?
ColaUida, but it's pronounced Caliuta. Vinny Caliuta. Yeah.
I just want to tell the audience, Vinny was with Zappa. He toured with Zappa. He was in Joe's Garage, Tinseltown, Rebellion, Shut Up and Play Your Guitar. He also played with Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, and I think Buddy Rich Band for a while as well. He's a very sought-out drummer.
Well, he's also played on some of the biggest heavy metal records of all time, and you wouldn't know it because he doesn't get credit for it.
Really?
He's also been with Sting for years. He's been with, what's her name, another huge female pop star. He does all kinds of uniquely different gigs, and literally, Faith Hill does a bunch of her stuff. I mean, he does country stuff, he does rock, he does jazz. I mean, he's a virtuoso. There's nothing he can't do, and he truly is the most in-demand session drummer in Los Angeles by far.
Yeah, he's incredible.
And, he's amazing. Yeah.
Well, if Hendrix heard this album, he would totally be blown away. You know?
I would hope so.
God!
I'd be like, dude, I'm sorry, man. I mean, I tried. You know.
Brian, I'm gonna tell you something, man. I've heard a lot of bass players. I've interviewed Chris Squire, Greg Lake, Jeff Berlin, some of the great bass players. I'm gonna make a statement. I think you are the greatest bass player I've ever heard.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Anybody that can put together an album like this and a tribute to Hendrix and sound that way, I've never heard anything like this before in my life. Well,
thank you.
What an album. Oh my God.
I appreciate that. And that means a lot because you've heard a lot of music. And
I've heard a lot of music, yes. A lot of great bass players.
Thank you. And you know, for me, I don't know if you know the story behind this record, but this is a record that I never ever would have made on my own. And the way this record came about was really unusual because, you know, I'm a bass player. I'm a jazz bass player from grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Why would I be doing a Jimi Hendrix record, right? It's like, what would be, you know, what would I be? It just makes no sense. So I'll just tell you quickly how this came about. Many years ago, I was having lunch in Los Angeles with a record company executive friend of mine from New York City. And we're just having lunch talking, you know, shooting the music industry, you know, stuff at the time, just talking. And out of the clear blue, he says to me, he's like, you know, man, you should do a Jimi Hendrix record.
Huh.
And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, you should do a Jimi Hendrix record. He goes, I think it'd be great. You should do it. And I'm like, what would I do? You know, like, what would me be doing a Jimi Hendrix record? I mean, I'm a bass player. It's like, I mean, you know, and I was just, he's like, well, you know, you should really think about it. And I'm just like, you know, thank you, but yeah, I just didn't get it. I changed the subject, and that was it. 2 years later, I'm having a conversation with another record company executive friend of mine, and this guy's in Japan. He's Japanese for a Japanese label. Out of the clear blue, he says to me, you should do a Jimi Hendrix record. And I just stopped in my tracks because it's like, wait a second. I've got two different record company executives, you know, 10,000 miles apart, 2 years apart that have never met each other, saying the exact same thing. I better listen to what they're saying because they're obviously seeing something that I'm not.
That's
that
right.
I don't have a clue.
It's an omen.
Because they're getting something.
Yep.
And that's how the record came about. It's like, all right. And I started listening to Jimmy's stuff again because obviously I was a fan. And it just kind of dawned on me of like, wow, I could do this. It's like his music, you know, lends itself, you know, I could do this and I could make it something that's mine. Now I understand why they suggested it. I never would have thought about doing a Jimi Hendrix record. But the fact that it was two guys 2 years apart and completely across the globe saying the same thing, that just blew my mind.
Exactly.
And for me, that was like, I'm going to take this seriously and I'm going to look at that as an omen. The universe is telling me something, I'm going to listen.
Exactly.
So that's how it came about, man. It's completely unexpected, you know?
Yeah, I never knew the bass could sound so much like an electric guitar like that, you know, and what I think one of the biggest fan reaction when I went on YouTube and and saw the reaction of some of your fans. I think Hey Joe got the most views.
Well, that Hey Joe, I love the way that came out. That production on the record is it's monumental for me, because it starts out mysterious and vibey but small, and then it just becomes massive. And I loved the challenge of building that song to start where it starts and ends, and have it end where it ends. That journey is incredible. And there was one other thing about that song that was amazingly challenging but very rewarding. They sound like guitar solos, but they're piccolo, they're bass. But there's 3 different solo sections on the record. It starts with the fretless, and then I do the acoustic piccolo bass, steel string acoustic piccolo bass, which sounds like a steel string guitar. And so it's like an acoustic solo, and then I go into the rock and roll, overdriven, distorted, electric guitar solo, which is also still a piccolo bass.
Yeah.
But the third solo, the one that builds, that solo was over 2 minutes long. And you don't really think about it. You can see a band live and they're jamming. It's like, who cares? 2-minute solo, you just blow and you're having fun. But on a record, a solo that's over 2 minutes long is like a lifetime on a record.
Sure.
And it's to start where it starts and then end where it ends and keep it musical and non-repetitive. That was a monumental task that was actually a joy to do, and I'm really proud of that, because it came out so strong and so powerful and very real and very organic, but it's just like, oh my God, this is like over 2 minutes. It's like, how am I going to say in 2 minutes? It's like, it was a big deal, but man, when that solo starts and the groove breaks down to nothing and it's just Vinny in that pocket and the fretless bass underneath and nothing else, it's just like, oh my God, it gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. I just crank that and just listen to Vinny's kick and snare and that space, the drama in that space, and then when the solo starts and builds, that's truly one of my favorite moments on the entire record. It's just like, wow, especially when you crank it and you can really feel the power and the impact of the kick and snare from Vinny. There's so much drama in the kick and snare that gives you that palette for me to blow over for 2 minutes. It really sets up that energy to play on, and that's the only tune on the record that's got that kind of drama and that vibe, and I'm very proud of the way that came out. And it's cool that people react to it and get that, because for me, it's like, man, that's like the culmination of everything on that. That's great.
The other one that sounds, very electric guitar-like is All Along the Watchtower. I mean, that's... Yeah. Oh, jeez. I never thought that was amazing. Yeah. Incredible, man. All the songs, they're all, it's a different way of listening to Hendrix, Who cares about somebody playing Hendrix music that sounds like Hendrix? Exactly, with the guitar, I mean, any cover band, anybody can do that, but the way you presented it is just fantastic.
Well, thank you. Well, again, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head in a sense. It's like there's a million cover bands that are going to play these songs the way Hendrix did, and they're all going to sound, no one's going to sound like the way Hendrix did it, but they're all going to sound great. The classic tunes. It's going to be real guitar players playing this stuff, and it's going to sound great. I mean, but I couldn't do that because, number one, I'm not a guitar player, and number two, we don't need that. You have one master who did it. Why try to emulate or reproduce what someone did at a level that you're never going to be able to do it at? Yep. Because for him, it was his honesty and his truth.
Exactly.
For me, it's my perception of his music. It's not my music. It's my take on his music and my perception of his music. For him, it was his music. So you can never bring your twist on something, but you can never do what the original artist does with something that came from them. So it's like, why even bother? If I tried to play like Hendrix, it would have been a joke.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, you know what? I'm going to do what I do and honor how cool this music is, and how fun this music is, and how legendary this music is, and for people to also get into his music icon who performed his music. Because it's not like it's, you know, harmonically advanced, you know, heavy-duty music. It's not. They're just really cool, fun tunes that really stand on their own. But his delivery of the music is what made it so powerful.
Right, right.
He didn't sing. He spoke to you.
Yep.
He talked to you. He told you a story. And then he'd play, and it was a whole other world, you know. So, you know, he was so powerful in that way. When I started listening to this, it was just like, I can't even think of doing anything what he did. I just got to make it mine. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another reason why it works, is because it's honest.
Sure.
I'm not trying to play like Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I'm not even trying to play like a guitar player. I'm only trying to play like how I know how to play. That's it. Sometimes it really sounds like guitar. Sometimes it sounds like a bass player who tunes the bass up high. That's fine. I don't care because it's about the music. But, you know, for me, I had to make it mine, and it had to come from my heart in an honest way. If not, people would see it through in 2 seconds, you know.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you at one point. You said you're not a guitar player. Yes, you are. You're a guitar player and a bass player.
Yeah, well, if you put a guitar in my hands, all I could do is sit on a boat and row it. I can't play guitar.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Play guitar.
You made the bass sound like a guitar. That's all that matters.
But I can pretend to play the guitar, and it's okay.
It's okay with me.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I can't play guitar at all. But it's fun. It's fun to pretend to be a guitar player. That's true.
You know, there are 2 songs on there, I guess, with a little bit of background voice in it. Freedom and Crosstown Traffic. Where did that come from? Where are those voices that kind of...
Yeah, there's actually, I think there's 3 or 4.
Is there?
That have the background. Well, because what I did was, you know, it's an instrumental record, but on Hendrix's original recordings, there were background singing, you know,
right.
Guys in the band sang, you know, freedom, you know. So I was like, you know what, man, let's do that. So it's literally myself, Tom McCauley, the recording engineer, and my dear friend Bruce Stone, who's the bass player, who I grew up with, also in Tucson. And, you know, he just came into the studio, and what we did it exactly, we did it like the old days. The 3 of us literally went in there, and we had 1 microphone, and we all literally surrounded the mic, and we all sang those, and we didn't sing them like singers, because we're not singers, and it's perfect, because they suck, but they're perfect because they're great, if that makes sense. They're right for the music, they're right for the vibe, and we had so much fun doing it, and literally just 3 guys around 1 mic just yelling essentially. But it's perfect. They came out great, and it was so much fun. We had a blast doing that, and it's what the music is. I mean, that's, you know, you listen to his records, that's exactly what he had.
Right.
So you know what? Let's just do it, and that was fun. I've never done that on a record before, so that was really cool.
It was perfect. Was Foxy Lady a bit difficult to do?
They all had their challenges. The biggest challenge for me is going back to what I said a little while ago, is that Jimmy, he was a larger than life figure, and it wasn't like he was a crooner. He wasn't like, you know, an amazing singer. It wasn't about singing. It was about telling a story.
Right.
He talked. Half of his vocals were talking, and it's how he sang. It's not what he did. It's how he did what he did, and the human experience and the human element of how he delivered a song is so remarkable and so powerful that it is literally impossible to replicate instrumentally and do it justice. And there were a couple songs where I tried, you know, here's the melody of the song, I'd play it, and it just sounded awful because it's a metal string with my finger pushing it down on a metal fret, and that's it. And you can't compare the soul of that to the soul coming out of an artist's voice, especially an artist like that. So what I did was like, you know, half of this record isn't going to work, and I got to figure it out, and I got to figure it out fast. So I started using different instruments, and I realized that fretless bass is much more human than fretted bass because of the sound of the instrument with no frets. And it allowed me to be much more emotional in how I played a melody and to have much more of the element of what the human voice has versus a metal string pushing down on a metal bar, which, has the soul of a transmission, unless the artist gives it soul. But in that kind of music where you're trying to tell a story and deliver it, it was just really hard on some of that music to do on fretted bass. The fretless really made it possible to bring a passion and a humanity and emotion into the melody, and it made it work. So several songs are fretless bass leads because it worked, and it helped me tell the story and do it justice, because I just couldn't do it justice just playing it on fretted bass. So from a bass player point of view, it's really fun because I'm playing all these different basses and I'm playing a lot of fretless bass, which is really cool because, fretless bass is a very specific sound, and it's not like you're going to use it in most sessions or most records or most music. So for me, it's like, wow, it's cool. I actually get to play this bass and, and actually say something with it, and that was really fun. And it really helped me emotionally tell the story and make it more human because it was impossible to replicate the emotion that came out of his spoken word.
How long did it take you, Brian, to make this record?
I'm trying to remember. That's a really good question because I was doing a lot of traveling at the time. So I would come home off the road, record some tracks, then go back out on the road, and then come back. So I was in and out and on and off on it for a long time. Not long, but normally you try to sit down and you make a record, you focus on it, and you can do it in a reasonable amount of time. In those days, I was traveling a lot, working a lot, doing other things, so I really only could work on it when I had the time to work on it because of, trying to earn a living in the music business, So it was on and off over a period of months, but the thing that's interesting too when I think about it, now that I'm remembering, because all the parts are me, you look at it this way. Let's say it's a 5-minute song, right? You go to the studio. David Foster calls me for a session. I'm going to play in a session. It's a 5-minute song. You play the song 5 minutes, and if you're cool, you're cool. You do it 2 or 3 times, you're done. You play the bass part. You do the song. It's a 5-minute song. You're done. In this case, everything you hear is me. So I had to keep playing over and over and over and over again all the different parts on all the different instruments and build them and stack them. So it literally was like a construction project.
Exactly.
Layering all the different things.
Yep.
So it would take a long time to build all those parts because it's all the rhythm parts, all the lead parts, all the accompanying parts, the comping parts, the bass parts, the solos, melodies, all this stuff. And so it would be over and over and over and over again over a period of time to build the song. It literally was a project. So it actually would take me a lot longer to do it than a normal session or just like playing on a track and fun.
Sure.
I had to build it. So it took a while to do each song. And then, now that I'm remembering, I actually did the whole record twice.
Did you really? Huh.
What I did is when I arranged all the music, I played demo parts of everything to make sure that it worked,
Right.
And then I did all the demo tracks. So I had to do the demo tracks of all the main parts and make sure that I liked the arrangements and they're cool and it works. And then I had to have something for Vinny to play to, because he had to play the drums to something. He had to play to the music. And then once I knew that I had the actual finished arrangement and it, starts here and ends here and here's the form and here's the song, then I re-recorded everything with what you call your keeper parts.
Right.
Which is the parts that you're going to hear on the record.
Right.
So I literally did the record twice. Once for all the demos to make sure everything was cool in the arrangements, and then once everything was cool, then I went ahead and redid it with the parts that are going to keep. So I just remembered that I literally did it twice to do it.
I'm an author as well. As an author, they tell you the same thing. Rewrite your book all over again.
Yeah.
The same exact thing. It's weird.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense. And sometimes, that was the other thing too, in hindsight, looking back, is that, and it's funny because I'm noticing it now with the record that I'm doing now, which is going to come out in 2021, is that sometimes you have to get away from something.
Right.
You do it, you put your heart and soul into it, you give it everything of what you have, and then you get it to a point, and then sometimes you just have to, like, leave it. And then you come back and listen to it, whether it's a day later or a week, or what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just get away from it and listen to it with a completely different set of open ears, or in your case, if you're an author, open mind, and what you're writing. And in my case, open ears from what I'm playing and listening to. And it's sometimes you do stuff and you're just like, oh man, you know, this is, I could play better than this, or this I ain't feeling it, or it's like, it's cool, but you know, or whatever, and then you get away from it, and then you come back and you listen to it, and you go, wow, that's a hell of a lot better than I thought. Or, wow, I really love this, but I want to fix this. But, you know, I'm going to fix these things, but everything else I'm cool with.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes you have to get away from it and listen to it with fresh ears and fresh eyes.
100%.
And fresh everything to know, okay, I actually said something, or versus, nah, I got to redo this. You know what I mean? So, that also takes time.
And sometimes the little mistakes here and there, you should leave them in. You know, they always say that. You know, instead of trying to be perfect, sometimes the mistakes are okay.
Man, I had one life-changing, amazing experience with that exact thing that you just said. And that was with the late, great, brilliant, I miss him to death, George Duke.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I loved him as a man. What a beautiful person. Mm-hmm. He was such a pleasure to work with, and we did a lot of records and productions together. He's on my records, I'm on his record. We've done a lot of other artists together. Just a beautiful human being. I miss him so much, but making music with him was just a joy. And we did one of his records I played on, and you know, we're jazz guys, so
right.
You hit the red button, you record, you just play. You improvise. You start at the top, you end at the end, and you're done. I mean, it's like you play live. I mean, we're players. You know, I've never worked anything out in my life. You just go in and you record and you play.
Sure.
So, and it's, you know, one of the songs had a bass solo and I'm playing and everything's cool and I like, you know, I'm hearing this thing and I go up and do this crazy lick that, you know, that I was hearing and you know, everything was great except for I didn't stick the landing. You know? And it's like, I'm like, oh man, I gotta fix that. And you know, we're listening to it back in the studio and I'm like, just punch in there for 2 seconds, let me just fix it. And he's like, fix what? I said, no, man, I screwed it up. Let me just fix it. He's like,
right.
He's like, hell no. He's like, it's perfect. He's like, it's perfect. I missed it. He's like, it's perfect, man. I goes, I know what you were doing. I know what note you were trying to go for. It's like, it's perfect. I don't want to change it. You ain't changing that on my record. He's like, his whole thing was, I know what you were trying to play.
Right.
Your heart was in it. So you missed it. So what? I know it was honest and it was real. You're not fixing it. And that just blew my mind.
Yep.
Because with today's technology, something like that would have literally taken 3 seconds to fix.
Right.
I'm not exaggerating.
Yep.
It just would have been bing and it would have been fixed. And he's like, no, man. He's like, it's real. I'm not gonna. It's perfect. It's because I know what you're doing. I know what you're going for. I don't want it fixed. It's like it's right. And I mean, I had a hard time sleeping that night because of that. Because I had to accept the fact of living with his terms. Because me as a perfectionist, it's like I want it right. On the flip side, his idea of perfection was the honesty of going for it, and going for it was more important than succeeding.
Exactly.
And I learned so much from that moment of him wanting a mistake on the record because it was pure and it was honest and he knew what I was trying to do. That was like an amazing moment for me. I will never forget it, and it made me have so much respect for him, and it taught me a great deal. It was incredible. So I understand what you're saying. Leave the mistake. I get it. You know, I totally get it.
Yeah, I talked with Billy Cobham a bunch of times. I know you worked with Billy, and of course the Spectrum album. You know, all improvisation. And I'm sure there was a few mistakes there, but it came out fantastic, you know. And it's just, you know,
a legendary record, man. That record changed the world.
And Tommy Bolin, and you know, it was incredible. It's just incredible.
I mean, their record's just killing. Yeah.
When your album came, when I first listened to it, the first thing I did, I had just interviewed Jack Cassidy, and I raved about it to Jack Cassidy. Because, you know, he
said Jack Cassidy's like, Brian who? What?
Yeah. Well, you know, he played on Electric Ladyland. He toured. He actually was on stage with Jimi Hendrix, and he's a bass player. I said, this is perfect for him, man.
Yeah.
You know?
That's funny. That's great. Yeah, he's like, who the hell is this jazz guy being, sacrilege Jimmy's music? It's like, who does he think he is?
No.
I mean, I've gotten, in the past, when the record originally came out, and the first version, and then I did a record that was also a tribute to Jaco Pastorius, which is another situation where it wasn't my idea, and that's a whole other story about how that record happened, but it's the same thing where, I would get, like, literally hate mail of people. Who do you think you are doing this? How dare you? I mean, it's like,
that's crazy.
It's, because people put these, they'll put people like Jimi Hendrix on such a pedestal. It's like, who do you think you are? It's like, dude, there's 12 notes, man. It's like, I'm inspired and I'm honored to do this. It's, I understand how people can be defensive, but it's like, come on, get over it, But yeah, people that have no clue who I am because they're not jazz people, they'll be like, what does that jazz guy do to Jimi Hendrix record, But that's funny. But then when you listen to it, it's honest. I think the honesty comes through. I really do think the honesty comes through.
Now, I heard you play. I heard Voodoo Child, but it wasn't on the album. I think I heard it on YouTube, right?
I have no idea if it's on YouTube or not. If it is, it's not supposed to be.
Really?
You know how YouTube works.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Jimi Hendrix estate would not give us the license to use Voodoo Child on the record, so we didn't put it on the record.
I think it's on YouTube. It sounded great.
It's killing. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't want it on the record. It's really slamming. It's kind of burning. Yeah.
It was incredible.
They wouldn't let us use it. Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I love jazz. I used to listen to the Crusaders, Les McCann, Return to Forever. I love all of jazz. But Buddy Rich was one of my favorite drummers, of course.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. And, your other album that came out, you got a new one coming out, but Thicker Than Water was, it had great reviews. And that, of course, goes back to smooth jazz and that kind of thing. I loved it,
It's a little, a smooth jazz audience will appreciate it, and I did a bunch of radio edits for smooth jazz. I had a #1 on it, but it's definitely not a smooth jazz record. It's got a lot more teeth. It's very funky and very in your face, but it's much more that contemporary jazz vibe, of kind of cool, funky, groovy music for sure. But it's not, it is not apologetic at all. It is definitely not a smooth jazz record. It's pretty intense, but that was a really fun record too, because it was funky and the horn section, it just, that record was really fun to do. And it's actually the record I'm working on now is kind of similar to that. Not quite as in-your-face funky as that record, but every song is completely groove-based, and there's a couple songs that are going to be similar with the horn section and all that, which I love horn sections. I just love having all that humanity. But the record I'm doing now is much more on the funk groove side, So it's cool to wear the different hats and do the different types of music. I love it. I can't stand how in this industry people get branded X. Yeah. It just, I hate that. Music, music is for everyone, and there's more than one style of music. I love to eat. There's a lot of food I like, but I'm not going to eat the same meal every meal.
Exactly.
It's nice to have variety, and sometimes you're in the mood for this, sometimes you're in the mood for that. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I hate how much judgment there is in music, especially in jazz, because there's that huge chasm between smooth or contemporary funky jazz and straight ahead traditional jazz, where they just hate each other, and it's just like, man, music's music, a good song's a good song. I don't care what it is. Yeah. Good playing is good playing. I don't care what it is. There's just, life's too short for that kind of judgment. Sure. If it's not your thing, then don't listen to it.
Exactly.
But don't criticize somebody else's heart and soul.
Yeah, you don't have to criticize it. Yeah, really.
Yeah. So it's just, I wish people listen with their hearts instead of with their minds. And just, listen to it because, appreciate it for what it is. Don't shred it for what it isn't.
Right.
Because we're not all going to be, we're not all going to make the most amazing record in the world, and we're not all going to make what makes you happy or make what makes me happy. It's like just appreciate it for what it is.
Right.
And I think if people listen with more of that attitude, they can go, and go back to the Hendrix record. It's just like, yeah, man, it's a great record. It's fun. It is. The musicianship is stellar. Am I a guitar player? No. Do I sound like Jimi Hendrix? No. So don't criticize it for what it's not.
Right.
Listen to it for the fact that, man, this is pretty slamming stuff, and that's all on the bass. Well, I've never heard that before.
Yep.
That's called having an open mind. That's cool.
That's why I hate Rolling Stone magazine. They were always in that negative mode from the beginning. It's like they thought, a review's got to be very, very tough on the artist, and they destroyed a lot of people that had very, very good music. I'm not like that at all, man. I'm very positive. I look for the good things in every song and every. I just interviewed John McLaughlin. He just did a song with an Indian musician, artist, a singer. I mean, it's nothing like John McLaughlin. It's actually an Indian singer kind of chanting through the whole thing, and it's all Indian, but he's doing it because he wants to do it. He gets out there and does different things, and that's
one of the things that makes him amazing.
Right.
That kind of vision, and it's about the music. It isn't about always doing the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. Yeah, I respect people like you guys, willing to go out there and do different things like that, Zappa did that,
I mean, look at it this way, man. I mean, there are people who love Johnny Cash. Are you going to tell me that Johnny Cash wasn't honest?
Right.
Are you going to tell me that his music didn't mean everything in the world to him?
Exactly.
There's a reason why the guy sold tens of millions of records and became a superstar.
Right.
So, because it may not be your thing, therefore you're going to put him down because you don't necessarily get it?
Yep.
It's like, who are you to do that? It's like, you can't judge somebody else's heart and soul.
Yep.
If it's not your thing, then bless it and move on to your thing. It's like, you can't, I guess that's one of the things that bothers me so much in music and in society, but a lot, over the years in jazz, there's just so much judgment about, you're not Coltrane, you're not this. It's like, you're right, I'm not, and I'm not trying to be either.
Exactly.
It's a nice song. What's wrong with that?
Yep.
Everybody's, whatever. It's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Well, one song on Thicker Than Water, Minneapolis, 1987. That have anything to do with Prince?
Well, listen to the song. What do you think? It's more about the vibe. It's Jimmy Jam. It's Terry Lewis. It's Prince. It's what came out of Minneapolis in the 80s.
Okay.
It's about the type of funk that came out.
Right.
And Prince was a huge part of that.
Yeah.
When you think about what came out of that era, when you think about what came out of that town in that era, and also and how involved he was in the scene, but so much of just that vibe. So for me, it wasn't about him directly, but it's without a doubt about him indirectly. It's about that sound and that vibe, and that's one of those tunes. It is so much fun to play live. Oh my God!
Yeah,
it is just so much fun to play live. But that's one of those tunes that just to me, the name says it all. It just defines exactly what that vibe is and what came out of Minneapolis. And there was a Minneapolis sound, without a doubt. There was a Minneapolis sound.
Great album. I think Bob Dylan was from Minneapolis, right? Or Minnesota for sure. Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman.
I don't know if it was maybe Minnesota. I don't know. Bob Dylan wrote all along the West Coast.
Yeah. That's another guy who did his own thing, right? I mean, a lot of people probably couldn't get it, with his voice and everything, but, he did what he...
He was a different kind of singer, a different kind of guy, but, look at the amount of songs he wrote that other people recorded that became hits and gave them careers.
Yeah.
You talk about a talented guy.
True. Very true.
So, it's like, again, that's the beauty of music, And that's the beauty of the diversity of music.
Yep.
You know, is that you can do all these different things and you know, do a different arrangement of a song or go a different direction or have different instrumentation. You know, if the song is, you know, if the song is righteous, it's going to shine through.
Yep.
I remember having a conversation with the producer David Foster, who, you know, is a legendary, he's one of the most successful producers ever. And I've done a lot of sessions with him, do a lot of things with him, and I just have, you know, he's got unbelievable ears. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And, you know, we had this conversation one day. In fact, it was an artist that he was producing, and we were on the session trying to replicate a vibe that the artist got on his demo, and the demo was just this kid singing and playing guitar, and you know the band on the session was me, Vinnie Colaiuta, Steve Lukather, Greg Fillinganes, and I'm trying to remember who else what was on it. There was one other major session guy on the date. And it's like the most successful session players in the world. You know, I'm in the room with like the A-team of A-team, and we're trying to play this one song, and it sounds great. And then Foster goes, "Come here, come listen to this." And he takes us all outside with a little ghetto blaster and a cassette. And he goes, "Listen to this." And he plays the kid's song of him playing, you know, with just the singing and on the guitar. And he's like, "Listen to that vibe." He's like, "We cannot do that." And he's like standing here with the 5 of the most successful musicians in the world. He's like, "We can't do this. We cannot replicate that." And we ended up getting into this whole conversation, and he said to me, and he's right, he just said, he's like, "Brian," he said, "a hit could be a dude singing with a guitar and a microphone on a cassette. If the song's a hit, it's a hit."
It's a hit.
You know, you could have a demo of a track that they spent $20,000 on the demo with the most amazing production in the world, and if the song's not a hit, it's never going to be a hit.
Right.
And he's like, the song comes through, and it doesn't matter how it's recorded.
I agree.
The song comes through, and he's right. That demo of that kid playing guitar and singing had an energy and a vibe to it that we could not replicate.
Yep, I agree.
And it was a hit on its own, and it was another one of those learning lessons that's like, wow, you know, sometimes you just can't force it, you have to let it be what it is. Sure.
All the Beatles songs, the early stuff was, you know, I mean, very archaic in a way, you know, the way they were, you know, I mean, you had George Martin, of course, but, you know, the studios weren't that, you know, fancy or, you know, electronically ahead of its time.
The productions, the sonic production of a lot of that stuff and the performances were awful.
Yep, exactly.
But they were real, and the songs were hits. I mean, it's amazing. You know, it's really the truth. I mean, when something's good and it's real, it's gonna shine through. I mean, that's it. And the production doesn't have to be great for it to be great.
Nope.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I actually did a Christmas record. I did a holiday record.
Right.
And one of the songs that I recorded, which I did a completely different arrangement of, was Paul McCartney's "It's a Wonderful Christmas Time." And you know, when I listened to the original, the production of that song was unbelievably horrible. And the performance of that song was unbelievably horrible. And it's like, this sounds like he like, this song, the production of the song, it sounds like he lost a bet, or he lost a poker hand or something, and he did this song, because it literally sounds like a throwaway song.
Yeah, he does.
Until you get the big picture vibe of it.
Right.
And it's brilliant because of what it is. And it's obviously not great execution and great production, but the song is totally adorable and catchy.
Right.
And it's Paul McCartney, and it became a massive hit.
Yeah.
And it was just such a trip listening to that, doing my own take on it, which is completely different than his. But it was just like, I can't believe how bad this is. This is horrible. All the noise, there's stuff in there.
I know.
It's almost like they intentionally dropped stuff with the mic in there. I mean, I'm serious. It's like, it's like, you gotta be kidding me. And then you're blown away by how real it is, and then you wonder why it became such a huge hit.
Yeah.
It's totally honest.
I mean, the early Elvis tunes is how simple they were recorded. I mean, I was a top 40 guy. You know, I love top 40 radio. I was a top 40 radio DJ back in the 70s. And you cannot replicate the 60s sound of top 40 today. You just can't do it.
Especially with the reverbs.
Yeah.
And the vocals and just the you especially like if you listen to that old Elvis stuff.
Yep.
There is nothing that sounds like that now.
Absolutely nothing.
Not even close.
It's amazing. I want to add.
I thought Elvis was genius. I love Elvis, to be honest with you. I thought he was
sure.
I thought he was brilliant. I mean, he was so groundbreaking in so many ways.
I agree.
I mean, I think he was amazing. Big fan. I know that sounds crazy, but lots of respect for his uniqueness. There was nobody like him.
I've got a huge respect too for Little Richard, man. I mean, as far as rock and roll, you know, it was amazing how far ahead of his time he was as well, you know?
Absolutely. And look at what he went through because of his race.
Yeah, exactly.
In that music, right?
Exactly.
And his sexuality in that music.
Exactly.
In those days.
Amazing.
Amazing that he had the career that he did.
Amazing. I gotta ask you, man, what was it like playing with Stan Getz?
Well, you know what the saying is about him is like, oh yeah, he was a nice bunch of guys. He definitely had multiple personalities.
Really?
And I'm actually not. I'm actually quite serious. He had real issues, and he had real drug and alcohol issues that changed him. He became a different person when he was lit.
Yeah.
It was most of the time. Musically, it was an incredible experience. Truly one of the most gifted musicians of all time. I mean, the guy was a savant. He was a genius. Unbelievably beautiful player. Would never make a mistake. Would never repeat himself. There are very few musicians on any instrument in any style of music that would reach the level of musicianship and ownership of the music and his instrument as Stan Getz did. He truly was a master of masters.
Right.
So musically, he was remarkable. And I was 18 when he called me. So I'm just this kid in Tucson, Arizona, playing local jazz gigs with friends, trying to figure out my life. And then I get called from Stan Getz. And the next thing I know, I'm like traveling the world with a legend. So that was a complete, my whole world changed. So I went from like playing with local, musicians to like playing with the best players in the world like overnight.
That's great.
So that was a trip. That was amazing. That was quite intimidating. Playing with people that were so good, it made me feel like, why am I here? I should be like playing with my Matchbox players. I mean, that was an amazing experience. But from the human side, when he wasn't stoned, either on pot or cocaine or God knows what else he could do, he was a heroin addict for many years, but he quit.
Yeah.
But when he wasn't lit on something or drunk, when he wasn't lit on something, he was actually a really nice, loving man.
Yeah.
When he would smoke pot or drink, which was constantly, for the most part, when he was on something, he was a very disturbed, very dark,
right,
and very kind of disgusting human being. And it was a shame. It was a shame to see the both sides come out.
Mm-hmm.
But and your heart bleeds for somebody like that because they were completely out of control of their world.
Yeah.
But it was a great learning experience. I was with him for a year and opened a lot of doors for me. But musically, it was incredible, and I learned a lot about humanity too because I got to travel the world and see things and experience things that I never would have experienced had I not been with him. So I owe a lot to that experience, and I'm also very glad that I got to experience being that close to a true addict and seeing what that behavior does to him and how he would treat other people, and what he would do and how self-destructive he was. So, it was quite a life learning experience, but the music was just unbelievable, and I miss it to this day. It's not every day you get to play with people that are that good. that was a joy. That was just really, really a joy.
And I guess you got to play the girl from Ipanema, huh?
You know, oddly enough, I don't think we ever played.
Really?
He was in a different period then.
Yeah.
And was more exploratory. I don't think we
never played it.
We rarely did any of that stuff. We played a lot more jazz. He had a younger band. We did some originals from the guys in the band. He was very open to different music, which was cool. We occasionally would do one of the Jardine type tunes. I don't think we ever played that.
How about that?
Think, half the people that are there to hear that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was the music was cool because it was a lot of different styles of jazz, which was neat. It was one of his exploratory periods. So I was in that section, of the band where we do half real straight ahead jazz stuff, and then we would also do some funky stuff or some fusiony stuff or some whatever, and that was cool because it was different. But he didn't play really any of that classic stuff that made him a star.
How about that?
You'd think that you would play the song that made you a star.
Yeah.
For people, you'd think,
Huh. I
remember I played with Wayne Newton, and we were backstage, and I was talking to him, and he was actually really nice and very cool. And I just remember saying to him, it's just like, how do you, after all these years, what do you think about, or how do you get up for, what goes through your mind when you do Dankeschön? It's like, I gotta play that tune again. I mean, it's like, what do you think about? And he's like, Brian, he said, that tune gave me the life and the career that I have.
Yep.
I love it, and I'm blessed to have it. And his attitude about it was so cool, because I played with a lot of stars and a lot of bitter people that would come from a place of darkness. I hate that song, even though it gave them a life and a career and made them rich or famous. His attitude was completely opposite. His attitude was like, man, this song was a blessing for me. It gave me everything. And it was, and the place went crazy, because they want to hear him do it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the song that made him famous. People want to hear him do it.
Exactly.
That was cool. Man, that's awesome. I said, that's the right attitude. That's perfect. It was cool. It was nice to hear him say that.
The Dean Martin Forever Cool album, did you produce that? Did you bring in these guys like Kevin Spacey and people like that for that album? Martina McBride? How did that work out?
No, it wasn't. I just played on it.
Oh, okay.
It's just one of the guys, that played on. It's funny you mentioned Dean Martin because I was at Capitol with Chris Bodie, and there was a Dean Martin tune. I don't remember the name of the tune. I have to think about the tune, but there was a specific Dean Martin tune that they pulled off from the original Capitol Records, and it was back in the days of 3-track recording. This was before multi-track was really multi-track, so this is a long time ago. And it was a stereo track for the band and the orchestra, which was all live, and then the vocal was on a separate track. And they pulled the vocal out, and this was a song that was recorded, I would imagine before I was born, or I was, probably single digit. And I'm hearing Dean Martin in my headphones in the studio, and there's no click track, there's nothing else, it's just him singing, and I'm playing my bass. And it was at that moment that I realized, wow, he was amazing. It's like, he's swinging his butt off. It's like, I had no idea. It's like, and I'm just listening to him singing by himself in the headphones, and it's like, he's incredible. I had no idea he could sing and swing like that. And the engineer was Al Schmidt, who's got, who did all those original records. He's got like 7,000 Grammys. I mean, he's the most recorded. He's recorded more, of the great, pop stars and jazz stars of all time. And I just said to him, man, it's like, I had no idea that he could swing like that. And he's just like, Dean was amazing. Yeah. It's like, he said, he was the nicest guy in the world. He goes, I loved him. Everybody loved him. Frank Sinatra wanted to be him. Yeah. He was like amazing. And I said, for me, I grew up watching him and Jerry Lewis together. I had no clue that he could do this. I mean, I'm watching stupid funny movies, It was incredible You know, it was really cool.
He was a cool cat, man.
It was very cool.
Yeah, cool cat. He grew up, he loved the Mills Brothers. That's how he got his style, I think. You know, but those guys back then, they were incredible. I was very fortunate. I saw Frank Sinatra like 6 times in concert. I saw him in Vegas, Atlantic City, at front row seats. There was no band better than that band that backed up Frank Sinatra, man.
Forget it.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, and all the early Michael Bublé records, that's played on all those records, and we had the original Frank Sinatra charts.
Oh,
we literally had the physical charts that his band had. Old, full of drink stains and cigarette burns and stuff like that. We actually had some of the original charts.
That is cool.
And the original arrangements, you know, of that old Sinatra stuff, and it's like, my God, they just don't write like that anymore.
No, they don't.
They don't. They don't play like that anymore. And you're right, nothing swung harder. You know, outside of that, you know, Count Basie. Other than that, nothing swung harder than that. You know.
Yep.
So those arrangements were so good, and those bands were so great. But think about it, he got to do that every night.
I know.
I mean, that was his band. You know, he got to do that every night because it was all humans. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, he said he was just a saloon singer. That's how he described himself.
Yeah, pretty big saloon.
Yeah, exactly. I got one last question for you, but I just want to remind the audience, some of the people, I mean, Lou Rawls, Stephen Bishop, who was on the show. I love Stephen's a great guy. David Cassidy, you worked with. The list goes on and on.
Really nice. It was cool.
Oh man, Andre Bocelli and Bobby Kimball, he's been on the show. He's such a nice guy, really good guy.
Yeah, he's, you know, again, another legendary voice.
Yeah, and you did movie soundtracks. You did an interesting movie I liked was the Fabulous Baker Boys. I thought that was kind of a neat movie. I like that. You did some music on that, right?
Oh yeah, that was my first big LA film date.
Yep.
And it's like if you're going to do your first big LA film date, you know, that was a heck of a movie to be your first one because it was such a great jazz score.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, Dave's just brilliant. I love working with Dave. But it's like it was jazz and the players were great. And it's funny because I have a brother who's a musician and a father who was also a musician. So like, you know, I could relate to the story. I could relate to the, you know, to the brothers. But the music was just so much fun, and it was just the sessions were wonderful. And it was just like, you know, what a great entrance into the world of LA. You know, big budget, you know, film soundtracks. To play on that one was just so cool. Yeah, and plus Dave Grusin's just amazing. What a not only just a sweetheart of a guy, but what a brilliant composer and arranger he is, because he can do anything. You know, it doesn't matter what the music is. He's got the chops to do any style, and he does it with such integrity. It's just a pleasure working with him.
I think Michelle Pfeiffer actually sung in that movie. I think that was really her voice, right?
Oh God! So I just got to tell you that. So one of the funniest things I've ever experienced in my life was on that session, and I actually hadn't thought of this in years, and you just reminded me of this. So, I haven't seen the movie in years, but there's a scene where I think she's wearing some kind of, elegant red dress, and she's like laying on the piano, slithering on the piano, singing or something like that.
Right.
There's a scene. Well, so when you're doing the soundtrack to a movie, especially in those days, things are a little different now. I imagine the big scoring stages they still do it, but in those days, they would have a huge screen that would come down, and the whole orchestra, you would see the scene that you're playing the music to.
Oh, cool.
So even if your scene is, you know, you're doing a 45-second scene, you actually see the scene. You know, so the director of the movie's there,
right?
The composer's there, the arranger's there, and it's not for the musicians to necessarily see it, but it's for the people. You know, it's for the conductor to see it. It's for the composer to see it. It's for who's usually the conductor in those situations. The director of the movie's there. You know, it's just making sure everything is right so you can see the scene and hear the orchestra or whatever it is. So that scene comes on. We're doing the music for that scene, and you know, it's a huge screen on a scoring stage. So it's like, you know, imagine you're in a in theater screen that comes down.
Right.
So the human body is the size of, like, you know, a sequoia. So this scene comes up, and she's slithering around on the piano and being all sexy and all this stuff, and we're reading it down, and within 15, 20 seconds, the entire band falls apart. All of the guys in the band were looking at her instead of looking at the music, so it just stopped.
That's funny.
And we were just cracking up. I mean, the session just stopped because everybody was laughing so hard. But I'll never forget that when that was Michelle Pfeiffer's fault. So there you go.
That's
but,
cool.
Yeah, everybody just was like staring at her because she's the size of a building, you know, and nobody read the music. It was hysterical.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, here's your final question. This is an interesting question I ask everybody, and I get some very interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
Oh, man. that is a really unbelievably unfair question. How do you... It's impossible to answer that because there are so many people that I would have loved the opportunity to play with.
Well, pick a few.
Case in point.
Pick a couple.
Like, it would have been unbelievable to jam with Jimi Hendrix. Are you kidding me? That would have been just to experience that would have been unbelievable. I would have loved to play with Miles Davis.
Yep.
On another jazz side, I was in consideration to be Oscar Peterson's bass player, and I never had the chance to actually play with him yet.
Wow.
And to play with Oscar Peterson would have been unbelievable. Being a jazz bass player, playing with a virtuoso like that. I mean, there's so many guys. You know, Michael Brecker, we played on many records together. I never physically played with him on stage at the same time. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to have played with Michael Brecker. You know, there's a lot of great musicians that would have been fun to play with. Stevie Ray Vaughan would have been incredibly fun to play with because I think Stevie Ray Vaughan was just a complete virtuoso on his instrument. I think he was just amazing. You know, there are just so many musicians that are incredible that I would have loved to have had that experience with. And, you know, I grew up listening to Buddy Rich because I played drums. My father was a drummer. My father studied with the same drum teacher as Buddy Rich did. He used to go to lessons with Buddy together. He used to hang out in the same place, you know, when for lesson time. So as a bass player growing up as a drummer, I would have loved to have played with Buddy Rich because I know his playing intimately and I knew all his records. I would have played so well with him because I truly understood how he was playing and where he was coming from because I grew up a drummer. You know, so most people played their instrument. You know, for me it was like I was a drummer first, so I always understand and get what a drummer thinks and feels. So I would have loved to experience what it would have been like playing with him live. You know, I had the experience of, you know, a singer who I absolutely adored, Sarah Vaughan.
Yep.
You know, I got a chance to play a few songs with her, and it was just a few songs, but let me tell you something. It was cool. I got to play a few songs with Sarah Vaughan. It was unbelievable. It changed my life, you know. Bill Evans, the pianist, I had the opportunity to play with him, and it didn't work out at that time, and then he died. And that's somebody, he did more for the acoustic jazz bass player than just about anybody has. How amazing would that have been just to play one song? Even with some of these people, just to play one song, just to experience their voice. Even one song at times is enough to be like, wow, I get it, you know, and of course you'd want to play more than that, but just to have that opportunity to play with some of these people that changed the music would have been just phenomenal, you know.
Yeah, I think the greatest drummer ever, in my opinion, is Buddy Rich. And in living today, I'm going to say Billy Cobham. I mean, Billy's amazing. He really, really is.
Well, Billy's incredible. The thing about Billy that's cool is Billy was one of these guys that he is old school and new school.
Yes.
So he grew up with old school sensibility,
right,
which is why he's such a good musician. He understood the old school thing, and he's a great jazz drummer. A lot of people don't realize how great of an actual jazz drummer he is because of all of his fusiony and funky rock stuff that he did, because he was such a virtuoso and such a freak, you know.
Yeah.
But he was a great jazz drummer, you know, and he was that, you know, he was the bridge between the old school and the new school. He was one of the barrier-breaking guys that pushed that barrier forward and made that happen, you know. But there was nobody like Buddy Rich ever, you know.
Agree.
And he's one of those guys that just, you know, he was a freak. When he was a teenager, he was a freak, you know. So, you know, it would have been amazing to play. Even one song with him would have been amazing. You know, I have a lot of friends that played with him, and it just was like, oh man, I wish I could just one song. Let me just play one song, you know. But anyway, I get it.
Yeah, I love watching him on the Johnny Carson show every time he did his thing, you know, and he did a battle with Ed Shaughnessy, the Johnny Carson drummer, which was amazing. They did a drum.
Yeah, I felt sorry for Ed. It's like, I like to swim too, and I can swim butterfly, and I used to swim with the team. It's like, I'm not going to challenge Michael Phelps. It's just not going to happen. So, but Carson was a frustrated jazz drummer.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
His hero, you know. So
yeah,
he was always great on the Tonight Show. Always great.
Always great. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. I really appreciate it. You are the greatest bass player I've ever heard.
Thank you.
I hope the pandemic ends where musicians can go out on the road again. I mean,
that'd be nice.
and I hope you guys can come to Florida, especially the Tampa Bay area. And if you need any help finding venues, I can help you out with that.
That would be great. You know, I've played the Clearwater Jazz Holiday several times, and it's a wonderful festival. Who knows if that's ever going to happen again with the pandemic, you know?
I know.
But I would love to come down there and play. I've got a lot of friends in the Tampa area, and I've always had a great time down there. I'd love to come down there. It's scary, man. Who knows when we're going to be able to play live again?
Yeah.
It's just kind of mind-boggling. It's just like, are we ever going to be able to do this? You know, who knows how long it's going to be, you know? So hopefully we'll get through this period and we'll be able to go out there and play live and do it, you know? I hope so.
Well, thank you, man, for everything you do. We look forward to the new album coming out. When do you think that'll be released?
Well, Hendrix is coming out September 18th.
Right.
The holiday record is also, I think, coming out in September as well.
Okay.
And that's, that record came out much better than I thought it was going to come out. I know that sounds weird. It's just I never thought I'd ever do a holiday or Christmas record. And I have to tell you, I love it. It was really fun because it's really diverse. And then the record I'm working on now is slated to come out first quarter of next year. At this point, I would imagine probably March or April, and the first single would probably hit in February. So if I can get it done on time, it'll come out the first part of next year. So I'm working hard on that.
That'll be a good time too to release it. I think. I think maybe.
I like putting the records out earlier in the year, and I hope humanity can get a grasp on the pandemic so we can actually go out and perform again. I miss it. I love making music. I love recording music. I love producing music.
Yep.
But there's nothing like playing live for an audience that's there with you, part of the band, and giving you their love and their support. And it just makes it's the fuel that makes you want to just make every note the most important note you ever played in your life. And I really miss that energy of playing with a live audience, and I just hope we get a chance to do it at some point in the next 30 years would be nice.
30 years. Well, Brian, you're an incredible artist, man. I love your music. Like I said, man, you're the best bass player I've ever heard. Keep in touch.
Thank you. I will. Thank you for the time, and thank your listeners for putting up with me. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you so much. My best to you and your family.
Be safe.
All right, you too.
Birthday season. Be safe down there.
All right. Bye-bye now. Pre-order Brian Bromberg's Plays Hendrix. 10 stars if I could give it. It is an incredible album. It's a remix, remaster. It's available September 18th. But you can start pre-ordering it now. It's a remix and remaster version of veteran jazz bassist Brian Bromberg's 2012 tribute album to Jimi Hendrix. Bromberg Plays Hendrix will be released on September 18th in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the guitar's legend's death. The unique instrumental album actually features no electric guitar, with Bromberg's bass accompanied by longtime Jeff Beck drummer Vinny Colaiuta. Bromberg Plays Hendrix features renditions of such classic songs as Fire, Manic Depression, The Wind Cries Mary, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, Crosstown Traffic, and Purple Haze, among others. The reissue also includes a new original tribute tune Brian composed titled Jimmy. Also purchase Brian's most recent solo release, Thicker Than Water. You can also get that at Amazon.com. For more information about Brian Bromberg, visit www.brianbromberg.net, his official website. Brian's also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Brian Bromberg Bassist. Very special thanks to the great Billy James of Glass Onion PR for arranging this interview with, I'm sorry, not Billy James. That was the last one we did. Very sorry about that. I want to thank, hold on a second. I want to thank Fiona Bloom, of course, for arranging this interview with Brian Bromberg. Sorry about that. Fiona is also helps us out with a number of other artists, including the Zombies. So the great Fiona Bloom, I want to thank very much for arranging this interview with Brian. And, of course, the dynamic duo of Doug and Don Newsom of BBS Radio for making the magic happen for each and every broadcast of Interviewing the Legends. If you have comments or suggestions for the show, contact me at interviewingthelegends@gmail.com, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Interviewing the Legends with Ray Shasho, for the very latest interviews. It is real news, people. And, of course, my new book is finally out, entitled The Rockstar Chronicles, Series 1. Chronicles truths, confessions, and wisdom from the music legends that set us free. Order yours today on hardcover or ebook at bookbaby.com. It features over 45 intimate conversations with some of the greatest rock legends the world will ever know. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call 941-877-1552 or visit us at publicityworksagency.com, specializing in author and music artist publicity plans. We shine when we make you shine. Tune in to Interviewing the Legends every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on BBS Radio, Station 1.